we talked a little before about Adelaide's sort of South Australia's sort of racism, but also there's a underbelly, isn't there? There's a bit of an ugly side to South Australia in that it does hide so much.
It's denial.
Yeah.
It's absolute straight denial.
Yeah.
And it's always been here. It's a kind of historic thing. It's a colonial.
It's a
British colonial thing. I think.
Yeah. It's very.
And the Brits were just the same in South Africa. It was kind of part of denial and saying we don't do anything as bad as them. We'd never behave that badly.
Yeah.
But the end result is the same.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It just takes longer.
Yeah.
It's much more painful in the long run.
And you have to scratch away at it a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole generation of people who are hearing the words unlearning, and perhaps that's going some way to address some of it.
I'm really, really impressed by what they teaching kids at school, kindy and year one, primary school, lower, early years, the stuff about and learning languages and they talk about it so differently from what's
from our education.
Yeah.
I'd been disrespectful to the Queen, but I used to sing it and send her to Victoria. Happy with the Gloria.
Yeah.
Because it made as much sense as victorious and glorious. Yeah.
So I think things it's a bit different, but basically it's around. I think it's you've got to know people, and the chances now of knowing First Nations people is much greater than it was.
Yes. Back
in those days, where people were kind of invisible.
Yeah.
They were kept invisible.
Yeah, absolutely. You never saw anyone at school.
No.
There's when I was in high school, I met an Aboriginal girl, and then I found out a little bit later, because we both used to use our 5-cent bus fare to buy a ice block, and then we'd have to walk, and so we'd walk together. And she, I found out she was in Vaughan House, which was a place for troubled girls, and was going back there every day.
House,
yeah, and oh God, I wonder what she's done. And it turned out she'd done nothing. Yeah, she was. Yeah. Anyway, that's. There's a whole other story there, isn't there? But your reflections are quite amazing, and I'd really like to put them out there into the ether, if you're happy with that.
Sure.
Yeah,
quite happy with that. Yeah, I haven't kind of said anything too bad, I don't think, about anyone. No. It won't embarrass anyone.
No, it shouldn't do.
I won't bring shame on myself.
Yeah. But also, there's learnings that people have to have. If you can't perceive a future unless you can understand.
And it's also what I find really interesting about it, and your reaction really, is that it's just felt normal to me.
Yeah.
It felt normal but awful.
It was awful, but it was normal.
Yeah. But it was normal.
Yeah.
I think one of the times I was most fearful was a silly thing, but it was we'd had a demonstration at the university in Pietermaritzburg, and then people were going that evening, it was going 24 hours or 48 hours or something, a candlelight kind of thing at night as well, and people started peeling off and going into town to graffiti on the post office and, free Mandela kind of stuff, And I went along with one lot. I'd never done that before, never done anything so blatantly illegal.
Okay, yeah.
And the cops arrested us.
Oh.
They arrested us in the city. And the other two, I was so naive. They gave me the empty aerosol can to hold, and they didn't have anything. So they were let go because there was no evidence. And they took me in because, it was winter, and I had a big scarf on, and I had under my scarf I had the empty spray can, and they took me in for questioning, and they never found it.
They never found it. So they let you go.
They let me go. I was absolutely terrified. Yeah, and that kind of stuff is scary. Like when you actually come, when you've got no power.
Yeah.
And another time when they invited me, they demanded that a few of us went into the security police for an interview. And and that was scary when you go down the corridor and they open the door for you, this door with no doorknobs on it and stuff, and you go inside and you don't know what's going to happen. Because quite a few people were killed by security police or at least injured. I was protected. I was a white boy, with a fairly famous uncle, very famous uncle. So I was okay. I kind of knew that too, but it's still really scary.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Terrifying, yeah.
Yeah.
And they say things like, "We hear you've been drinking," that kind of thing. Drinking more than you were before, and they do say stuff like that too. If they saw you in the street, they'd just come up to you and say something that they've obviously got from the security police informers, some inside information about the new girlfriend or whatever,
That know all of that about you.
Yeah. as if it was relevant in any way, shape or form. Yeah.
Did you seek out South Africans when you came here?
No, I never have. Yeah. No, I mean, a few South Africans came here after that, and we would hang out together quite a lot,
Yeah.
But I never looked for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's partly, I don't know why really. I had a big enough family too,
Yeah. Yeah. And how much does your family know of your history?
My brothers and my siblings know, because they were there. They don't know everything at all. No one's ever asked me to sit down and ask questions about it. And quite possibly now's the only. I'm only now ready to do it.
Yeah.
I never told my parents anything. Like none of us did. I didn't. Apparently, it seems that none of us ever told our parents anything. We didn't worry our parents. The aim of a good child in those days was not to worry them.
Not to worry your parents, yeah.
Nothing to worry. Don't look here.
Yeah.
There's nothing to worry about here.
So it must have been terrible when your parents were being surveilled because
of
you.
And also, and one day I got really seriously embarrassed because I had written an article about the church, Catholic Church and wealth. And it was published in I think it was in the student newspaper. And that was taken up by the local press because it was Jeremy Hurley attacks uncle,
Oh, was that the
front page of the afternoon paper?
Oh.
And newspapers do things, sensationalist rubbish. So I had to phone my parents that day and tell them what was going on.
And were they impressed?
Well, they said, "Well, just give Uncle Denis a ring and talk to him." before he sees it. So I did.
Yeah.
They were fine. They were very supportive. I'm just thinking about it.
It's ringing there, but it makes the same noise. So, was there any more that you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. No. Except that, you know, some people I know who are banned over there, and you know, and lived for 5-10 years under banning orders, you know, really suffered. And good friends of mine, you know, so my experience is so minor, you know, it's so kind of minor.
And they're still there?
Yeah, still there. Yeah, one particular person who's still. They started a union for street vendors, and she's still kind of there. But she's now being given a couple of awards by the government, which is great, you know, in recognition of her work. You know.
But she was banned. She was banned
for long. Yeah. Shortly after I left, there was a whole tranche of bannings handed out to people.
What would they do when you're banned? What would you do? How would you spend your...
I don't know. Don't know.
You couldn't go anywhere?
You could go out, as long as you didn't...
You couldn't...
Be with more than one person at a time.
Yeah.
And you couldn't you couldn't work. Because most people were either education or union people, you know, and so you couldn't work in.
How would you exist? How would you live?
There was no social services or anything.
So people around would have to support you?
Yeah.
That's revolting, isn't it?
Yeah. And another friend of mine, you know, whose wife was banned, his girlfriend was banned, and they got married so that they could, purely for the purposes of that he could live in the house, and she could have someone to live with, you know. Otherwise, there would have been no possibility of more than one person being allowed to be there at a time, you know. And when you were married, you weren't counted as that extra person. You become the same person, you know what marriage does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could have two people. Oh, gosh.
And one of the really interesting things about that era was how silly it all was. Everyone knew it was really silly, you know, and that's a very gentle word to use, really, but it just made no sense, and everyone knew it couldn't last. It's impossible that this is going to last, and it's going to work. But the damage that was done was just phenomenal. You know, there was one instance where when I went back to South Africa. So this would have been in 18 years after I arrived here, so 1990. And I was staying with my aunt and uncle in Pietermaritzburg, and their maid said to me, because I was talking to her, by which stage everyone got bolder to talk, you know, and the staff were talking to them. And she said, the maid said, you know, people don't seem to understand that we could have just killed them all. All we had to do was put some poison in the food that we're cooking for them, you know, and we could have done it all on the same night, and you could have had a massacre. You know?
And they could have.
And they were talking about it. She said that's some of the conversation that was happening in the neighbourhood with servants, with cook, staff. And they could have.
But they didn't.
No. And that relationship is really fascinating, that loyalty and stuff. And it's because people know each other, as well. And nowadays, at least, you have to take out, pay into pension funds and give holidays and do all minimum wages and all that kind of thing. It's changed, and people, a number of, middle-class white people still have servants when they don't really need them anymore, but they feel like they owe a kind of support, or they're paying for their kids to go to school, and there's a whole lot of things that are happening.
I wonder if it will ever be the other way around, that black people have white servants.
I somehow doubt it. I think it's never, I don't know if it ever happened in history, has it? But no, it could easily. It could. It's happened in other countries, like parts of Arabia, in the Middle East. I think you have white servants there.
Yeah, nowhere in the so-called Commonwealth.
No, nowhere in the Commonwealth that I know of, and it goes against unwritten rules, I think.
Yeah, it does, and it's the same.
I think Queen Elizabeth might come back to life if that happened.
Talk about turning in her grave.
Yeah.
But it's the same in places like Bali, and people go there to live, and they have people that they're good friends with, but they're servants.
They're servants.
You can't get around it.
No.
Yeah.
And we used to call them servants when we were kids. They changed it to maid later on because it sounded not quite as servile. I think that's why they changed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. Housemaid.
But they were, as a kid, it was astonishing. And I found it unbelievable that you have a middle-aged man who's waiting at the table, to bring you your food. At some, not at all houses. Well, my grandfather's house, certainly, with a white napkin on his arm, And having cooked the meal, then he comes to the table and waits on us bratty kids. It's just, it was wrong. It was so wrong,
It is.
And if it was so wrong at the time, even when you were a kid, you just thought this is wrong. He's a man with greying hair,
He's an elder. Yeah, it's wrong on every level.
And once I realised that he's got children and grandchildren of his own, you just kind of, everything falls into place. But it's that first understanding,
So the unlearning would have been much more dramatic for you. The unlearning some of the ways, because it was right in your face.
Right in your face, yeah. And I still, I think I set the benchmark pretty high for myself too, And I think quite often think I'm being, if I'm not being very friendly to someone, I think, am I being racist? Am I being whatever?
Yeah, it'll always be there.
It'll always be there.
Yeah.
It's always there.